So, in the last section, we talked about the fundamentals, of because it's I don't like teaching tactics before I teach the fundamentals of what it is to be a person, which is first, rather than, like I always say, rather than first, if you stink, rather than putting on deodorant first, take a shower first and then put on deodorant. Because if you do that, then you're gonna have that BO with perfume. That doesn't smell good, right? People gonna smell the BO, right? So that's what I like to teach, and that's a fundamental to everything. Like if you don't apply the first area of what I taught, you're gonna be unhappy. It doesn't matter what happens if you get the guy, right? Um, you agreed, man. If you get the guy, it doesn't matter you're gonna be unhappy, and your mind is always gonna be trying to find happiness. And to me, it's a failure if I teach you guys how to get a guy and you guys aren't happy. It's a failure to me, because I know what really matters, and why would I want to strip people of that opportunity just because the other content sounds more like pizzazz and all that sort of stuff. It's diluting the information that I know. All right, does that make sense? I think that's the healthy way of going about things. Most people don't do that. Most people just focus on the surface level stuff.
Or the outcome, whatever the outcome might that they want.
Yeah, it's all for happiness. That's all the brain's trying to do. So the first one we're talking about is letting go of role plays to be yourself and stop getting hurt. That's what it's all about. Most of the time, we're usually playing roles in our lives. We're usually playing a role. The first role we get is the role of a girl or a boy. That's why our sexuality is very sensitive to a lot of people, because that's the first identity that people had. And that filters the way we perceive things. That filters what we want to do. That filters our interests. That filters what we do, what we do not do, right? And so there's a lot of pain behind your gender. You see, not the biological thing, but the conceptual perception of gender, right? Like I said, any conceptual sense of self is ego. This can range from having a positive sense of self to a negative sense of self. Ego is anything that enhances your self-image or decreases it. So if anything is enhancing your self-image and you see yourself better than somebody else or worse than somebody else, that's ego. You see? So behind shyness is fear of criticism, and judgment. Also behind extroversion is fear of not being attended to. So anytime somebody, and I'm not saying not everyone, but generally speaking though, all of those personality traits is all based on fear. A fear of being ignored, fear of being judged. All right. So behind a confident ego is also the fear of inferiority. That's what we all see, and that's all things that are just conceptual that people just do not notice. So whenever you feel inferior or superior to somebody else, that's the ego in you, right? So whenever you feel inferior to somebody else, that's the ego. This change is what is how we interact with people. The fluctuation. I talk to somebody that I talk to my boss, and I think he's better than me. What happens? Your ego diminishes. And suddenly you feel fear. You can't be yourself around your boss. Suddenly you talk to a guy you like because he's somebody you like. You could act attractively with a guy who you don't like. But because the guy's of higher value, you're like, oh, hey, Alex. Hey, Alexis, right? And that's all ego. That's not really true. But it's just a perception that you're seeing, right? So like when a girl, like for example, like when a girl rejects a guy, they call her a bitch for it, right? This feeling is accumulated from past emotional pain that encompasses your ego. So if a girl rejects me, right? I fuck you, bitch. You're ugly anyways, right? She rejects me, and then I see another girl, she rejects me, right? So what tends to happen is that if I'm not aware of the reaction, that reaction becomes part of my personality. And guess what? I begin to play the role of the victim. It's me versus women, the good guy versus the bad guy. Now, every woman I see, because of the gender, will be judged based on that standard. And a lot of guys have that toxic mentality towards women. So what happens? Because they feel inferior, because they've been judged by women, they've been hurt by women. What do they try to do? They try to exert their masculinity. And so a lot of women, in the hopes to try to gain their validation, they would put themselves down. They would change their personality just to capitulate to their demands. They would try to just be somebody just to get their validation. And it's not just a habit. It's not just a habit of relationship. It's a habit in relationship in terms of men. It's a habit with the world, where we're consistently trying to vie for what's good or wrong. We're trying to find yourself. You can't really find yourself because you're always playing a role. You're always changing your personality depending on the people who you interact with. So you cannot really be a consistent self. Yeah, you may be confident here, but when you're there, you're not confident. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's good stuff. I'm liking this. I like this content. This is actually some of my favorite things to talk about, right? And this is the crazy thing, is that when you perceive someone as superior, then that's the ego awakening their ego. This is crazy. That when you, and this goes in game a lot, when you perceive the person as superior to you, you're going to activate their own pain. And like, oh, yeah, I can control this person. Boom, they get stronger. And then you get weaker. Right? And so you awaken their own ego. And what happens is kind of like the egos vibe off of each other. Right? And so when the ego doesn't get a response, it seeks, it looks for it in negative attention. It's kind of like, so, you know those people who try to get you to react? It's because it's something inside of them is telling them, try to see there's something inside of her, right? That's why a bad relationship, it takes two to tango with bad relationships. Just because you're in a bad, like, it's not just him, it's also something in you that's resonating with what's in him. Am I making sense? Any questions? Good. All right. So when a girl, it accumulates, and so that's why when a lot of women, when they see men, they hate them. Also, when they see men as their source of happiness. They see men as the role of the provider. I'm the woman, the gender identity that they have, and I'm like, I'm supposed to be catered to. That's why I don't tell women, oh, you're special. Nah, fuck that shit. You ain't special. Because of that, women in this society have become very protected. And so what tends to happen is that they're always looking for someone to protect them. Always looking for someone to protect them. They're playing their role. They don't know that if they stop playing their role, they may feel some pain, which you do through presence, but you liberate yourself. And then you're gonna experience a lot of resistance from yourself and others. You're not acting lady enough. That's not lady. Like, you gotta find a man and find someone. You can't be alone. You're gonna be single your whole life. Like, you feel that pressure from society. And in reality, you feel that pressure because you don't really want to do it. But you do it because you just want to shut them up. And the sad part about it is that the action itself is not what changes you, but the conspitulation, the habit of conspitulating to other people's demand. So in every situation, you become different. You act one way here and you act one way there. So you don't really know who you are. Like,
and you have to be careful with that kind of stuff too, because I think sometimes when women have this strong desire to be protected or to be catered to or to use men as a source of happiness, they can come across the wrong person, and that creates a toxic situation. It makes it not really good. So, I mean, that may have been what people are taught, but it's not always a good thing, because that insecurity or that need or whatever it is that's in you sometimes will attract people that don't mean you very well.
Yep.
That's happened to me, so I try not to feel that way anymore. Like, it would be nice if you're around, but if you're not, you're not, but that can lead you into bad situations.
It happens a lot in relationships, because we don't notice it because it's unconscious. Mm-hmm. The roles we play are pretty much unconscious. We just don't notice it because it's just a habit that we have. A habit of continually playing these roles. And that's why you don't notice, because you have unconscious thoughts and emotions. When I mean unconscious, remember when I told you notice your watch? Mm-hmm. That's unconscious. It's there, but you just don't notice it because you're so focused on your thoughts. Mm-hmm. So what tends to happen is that because it works, the ego works in through coming through the back door, where the less you notice it, the more it's gonna get inside of you. You see? So, for example, a good thing to do when you're talking to somebody to overcome this is to notice the fluctuations. Like, notice the way you change when you're around someone, and notice the way you change when you're not around certain people. Just notice yourself changing. Notice yourself gaining more confidence, and then notice yourself losing confidence. It's not about changing it. It's just noticing it, because now it cannot hide. Now when you notice, you're like, oh, there you are. There you are, right? And so slowly but surely, it's gonna leave, but you have to see it. The problem is that by seeing it, you experience the pain that you don't want to feel. That's the issue. Is that People know that they know what to do, but they just don't want to because there's pain behind it. Like, give me something else. That something else is always a quick fix. You see? So that's the issue. So that's a role that most people play. People play the role of the victim. So the most common role that people play is a victim. They seek validation to feed it, right? They will go the lengths to distort reality. This is the ego as long as it stays unconscious. This is done through a personal story. So in order to stay alive, it needs a problem. If no one is there to listen to a story, it'll replay it in your mind until you find another way to externalize it. You see? So when you see a man as a provider, your needs won't be met and your ego will react. So the past pain of abandonment is not accepted. So suddenly you feel the past pain of abandonment. You see man as your provider. Then the next day, let's say you feel sad. You blame him because his role is to make you happy. And he says, why are you angry at me? You see, the roles that you gave on people, suddenly you begin to tell, okay, you're here to make me happy. You're here to make me happy. So whenever I feel unhappy, because I'm the victim, so it's not my fault, it's your fault. So I deflect the responsibility for myself onto you. We live in a victim culture where we're always trying to blame other people. Blame is an orphan. Nobody wants it. You see? Now, people think that blame comes with guilt. No, I'm talking about when you accept the role that you're playing. It's about just seeing it. It's not about changing it, because most people think they got to change it. You can't change it. But as long as you see it, you become more conscious of it. So suddenly when that arises, you're like, oh, that's not me. And you just see it for what it is. Does that make sense, Daniel? Yeah. You have any questions? Yeah. Questions, guys? For the camera. Oh, yeah, guys, you guys have a question? Right? Oh, man. I know, right? Go in the back, Daniel. Oh, man. All right, so falling in love is another example of the ego, right? It's the intensification of the ego. You feel your sense of self enhanced, and you even see in your mind, right? When you think of the guy, right? Let's say you think of me, you're like, oh, Alex, oh my goodness, right? You see me, and you're like, oh my God, and you see yourself being happy with me, right? And so what tends to happen is that you begin to notice that when I'm with him, I'm happy. He makes me happy. I need him. Now, why do you need to be happy? Because you're unhappy. You need your other half. You're not fulfilled. You think there's a need. Now, this thinking of not being fulfilled, what is it? Like we talked earlier.
It's what society has kind of...
It's a physical sensation.
Oh, yeah, that too.
You think it's a real thing that you're not full, that you need your other half. In reality, you're really full, but it's just that your conscious awareness is not noticing. It's just being constricted to one little area. So you think you're not full, but you're just being blinded by the form. You gotta step back and just see everything. You're like, oh fuck, like wait a minute. I am the awareness that allows all of these things to be here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's kind of strange because like I had this conversation with one of my girlfriends. It's so weird. Like when people look at my life, they think, "Oh, you're so happy, you have everything you want." But when I look at my life, I'm like, "Hey, there's this piece of me that I feel that's missing that I really want." But they're looking at the big picture. I'm just focused on this one thing that I feel that I'm missing, and it's strange. And I guess other people look, like I look at other people's lives and I'll say, "Oh my God, that's exactly what I want." But they're thinking, why do you want this? Like it's weird how that works.
It's because your mind wants satisfaction. That's all it needs. Like the mind is just looking for satisfaction, but satisfaction doesn't really lead to happiness because it's kind of like hunger. Yeah, you're hungry, eat, but you're gonna be hungry again. So you just keep feeding that monster. It's so you think that eating. Imagine you thinking that if you eat once, you're not gonna need to eat again. That's how we think about the mind. Oh, if I got that one thing, I'm finally gonna be happy, fulfilled, happy. No, but the problem is that your mind always kind of lies to you a lot, and it's doing it for good intentions because the mind really believes that it's gonna be happy if this happens. But the truth is that you're always going to be deceived into thinking that, but you're always going to return to that same place, which is pain. After the happiness comes the pain. After the high comes the low. After the marriage comes the honeymoon, and then suddenly they lose interest. That happens a lot. People don't really make you happy. Relationships don't make you happy. 100% of our relationships up until this point haven't worked out. You believe that? Up until this point, 100% of your relationships haven't worked out. Yeah, and so we all very positive about that, right? But the reason we're positive about that is because the mind is just trying to find happiness for you. It's trying to help you out, you know. So let's keep going.